Welcome to Becoming a Financially Confident Woman, the podcast that helps high-achieving women take control of their money and build wealth with confidence. I'm your host, Dr. April Murdaugh, financial advisor, college professor, and founder of Woman to Woman Financial. I've got women through retirement planning, generational wealth building, and everyday money decisions. Beyond the credentials, I understand the struggles on a personal level. I've experienced widowhood, divorce, homelessness, and the challenges of being a single parent. Those experiences shaped my mission to help women like you gain the clarity, confidence, and strategies you need to take control of your financial future. This podcast is where professional expertise meets real-life experience, so you can move forward without fear or overwhelm. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Becoming a Financially Confident Woman. I am Dr. April Murdaugh, your host, and I'm here always to talk about things and topics that can help you become financially confident. And so it's not always about money. There are things that intersect with finances that impact our ability to think right, our behaviors, just everything. And so today I am so excited to have Dr. Lauren here on. She is a licensed mental health counselor. She specializes in virtual therapy. So if y'all say you can't get a therapist locally, you don't have to. You have one right here that's virtually, but she specializes in working with high achieving women. She works with clients in North Carolina, South Carolina, Idaho, Vermont, and Florida. So she is all over these United States. And she helps women, conquer the feeling of overwhelm by expectations of family roles, internal pressure, external stressors, readiness, finances, all the things that plague high achieving women. And today we're going to talk about boundaries and relationships and finances. And you all know boundaries is a hot topic word. Everyone is saying boundaries. Well, she helps you truly create boundaries in all areas of your life. And, us women, a lot of times, high achieving women, they're probably the first successful person in their family. So they wind up carrying a lot of the load, a lot of the mental load, financial stress, decision making. I know because I've had that experience. And so today we're just going to have a candid conversation as to, how the emotional patterns, people pleasing, lack of boundaries can impact your mental health and your financial well-being. So, Dr. Lauren, I'm so glad you're here with us today. It's your floor, so tell us a little bit about the work you do, who you work with, and, the impacts that you see when working with your clients in this area.
Absolutely. So I'm Dr. Lauren Chase. I'm so excited to chat with y'all. I'm a totally virtual therapist. I also do speaking as well for different organizations. I talk a lot on boundary setting, adult children of emotionally immature parents, political and world event anxiety, and anything kind of related to high achieving women and parenting. I really am excited about this topic because it's something that comes up a lot with my clients in the work that I do. I'm not a financial therapist, but the financial topic comes up all the time in so many different contexts, right? And I see a lot of times my clients, especially my high achieving women, they might not be in control of the finances. They might not know what's going on with their finances, or they're totally in control and they're overwhelmed. I see a lot of challenges talking about finances and saying, hey, when I grew up, we didn't really talk about that. And so how do we rewrite these patterns that we have in our families of origin of we don't have to do finances the same way that our parents did or our parents' parents. And it doesn't have to be, typical gender roles. It can be however you want it to be. And feeling confident in figuring out what is it that you want out of whether it's your relationship or, knowing your financial picture, how much involvement you want.
So, but let's talk about boundaries as a topic. What does that mean? What does that look like? Is there a typical boundaries framework that you go by, or is it just whatever the person feels is proper boundaries. Like, what does that
Yeah.
mean, boundaries?
Yeah. So let's start with the definition of boundaries, right? Boundaries is anything that helps you protect your energy, your time, your money, your mental capacity, right? It's setting limits for yourself, right? It's kindness to yourself, setting limits and preventing burnout. I think you can't talk about boundaries without talking about burnout, and I think they're very connected. Boundaries are a way that we can prevent ourselves from burning out. It's a limit that we set and we express to others. I notice the strongest challenge people have with boundaries is we don't express it so much to others. We expect them to just assume that they're going to know what our boundaries are without expressing it to them. We have to tell them sometimes. And we don't even know what our own boundaries are often until they're infringed upon. And I think that's also the hard part is we don't often know until we're like, "Oh, this is a boundary for me." And I think I love talking about boundaries in finances because finances sometimes is a taboo topic, which I hate that that is the case because I'm like, if we don't talk about it, then it's not going to be discussed. And we're just going to keep things, whether that's talking about how much we're paid, whether that's talking about how much we're saving, investment opportunities, things like that. It's like if we keep that hidden, we're just empowering the system more.
So, that you bring up something important. And I'll tell you, I have a life coach in addition to a therapist, right? That means, I need a lot of work, y'all. And I am very open and transparent about that. Listen, I need someone to talk to because sometimes high achieving women are raised in, let's say, performative households
Hmm.
where there aren't really any boundaries, or she could really never express the things, her boundaries. And so we grow up, and I say we because I'm raising my hand to this, and we don't know what our boundaries are until they are infringed upon, you said. So,
Yeah.
how could we head that off at the pass? Is there something that we could do to help us explore what those are before we enter certain relationships so that we would kind of develop a standard for ourselves? Am I making sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So there's a book I often recommend. It's called Set Boundaries, Find Peace. And it's by Nedra Tawwab. She has a book and she also has an accompanying workbook. And she's a local Charlotte therapist here in North Carolina. And she's fantastic. It's a fantastic book that talks about, defining boundaries, where we get our boundaries from, and like really having us practice like exploring what our boundaries are and really defining that before they're even infringed upon. Because again, it's a topic we don't talk about until it's an issue. But we're setting boundaries every day. And no matter what we're doing, we're setting boundaries at work, we're setting boundaries with our partner. And it's just something that's not talked about enough until it's there in the forefront. It's like, how can we proactively talk about boundaries before it becomes a big issue?
Yeah, yeah. Because I'm sure, like in your practice, and I know in my relationships, I identify as heterosexual, and so
Mhm.
in my relationships with men, I didn't have any boundaries. So it was, a lot of the times I was, well, anyway, I was raised that, you please your husband, you do whatever, and
Yep.
you cook, you clean, you make them happy. And so
Hmm.
no one ever had the conversation about, well, what makes April happy? And so here,
Hmm.
you're achieving, you're growing, and you enter these relationships with people that probably you've allowed to press those boundaries and, you know,
Hmm.
infringe upon those boundaries. And then you wake up 25 years later and you're like, oh my God, you discover boundaries. And you're like, I can't live like this. And I say that because a lot of my high achieving women clients now wake up in marriages that they've been in for years and years and realize that the whole time that they lost themselves in the process. So I guess the question is, how do you set limits for yourself? Like, what does that actually mean? And how do you in your practice dive into helping people understand what their limits are?
Yeah. I use a really simple framework and I always tell people like I feel insert feeling word here because blank behavior. And I just always say start with that. Like I feel hurt. I feel disregarded. I'll use a simple example that probably a lot of women can relate to in these heterosexual relationships. I feel disrespected when you throw your clothes on the floor and expect me to pick them up,
Mhm.
right? I feel hurt. I feel overwhelmed because you're not participating in working on the laundry with me, household chores. That's always like an easy go-to, but expressing that really that I feel not that accuse you're doing this, you're bad, you're doing this. It's this how I feel because of your behavior. This is how I'm feeling and I'm owning it.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, so it really is about you. So when we translate that to finances and you say, well, women come to you and of course finances have been taboo in their
Mhm.
household. They grew up with that. How do you see women allow people to infringe upon their boundaries when it comes to the handling of the finances in a
Yeah.
relationship?
Yeah, so I see several different things. I see the woman taking it on totally herself and like totally getting overwhelmed and not figuring out how to divide it. Or I see them just defaulting to their partner and not being involved and not even knowing and just not having that information. And I think there's a piece of like we can all own different things in our relationships. That's okay, but you still need to know what's going on to a point. There still needs to be a point where you know how much money each partner is coming in with, however you choose to divide your finances, right? You choose together. But there needs to be a piece of information sharing because I think it's when that communication stops is when issues can develop. One person can own something, a task, that's totally fine. But is the other partner knowledgeable and knows what's going on, even if they're not so deeply entrenched in the bills and what's in the bank account, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I think that that is true. Like just having the transparency in the
Mhm.
relationship and knowing that, and I tell clients all the time, one person may be the spreadsheet person,
Yeah.
and then one person may be the not spreadsheet person, like or the
Mhm.
spender versus the saver and all of those things. So how do you help women kind of overcome some of those challenges when it comes to boundaries and finances? I love the I feel because, right? So it but to be honest with you, there are some times where the other partner doesn't really care about what you
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
so, how do you help them, I guess, specifically in terms of, all right, they don't care about how they feel. How do you help them take their boundaries back? How do you help them regain the confidence and things that they need in order to be able to express themselves, set boundaries, and move forward, if I'm making
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So, an activity I have clients do a lot, I call this the control circle. And I have them draw a circle, and everything inside of that circle they can control. Everything outside of the circle they can't. And I have them do it for a variety of circumstances, whatever it is. And thinking about boundaries within relationships, right? What can I control about my relationship and what can I not? Am I trying to control something that I cannot control? And is it something that I need to give up? Or is this a conversation? And, not that everyone needs to go to couples counseling, but it always can be helpful, right? If that's a piece where you're like, we're not seeing eye to eye. But in individual counseling, I always focus with my clients, what can you control in this situation? You can control how you react to your partner, the boundaries that you set with them, whether they adhere to those boundaries or not, you cannot control. You can control how you react to that though.
Hmm. Hmm. So really the onus is on you.
Mhm.
Really the
Yeah.
responsibility for how things work out is your responsibilities. So even when you talk about not just partner or romantic relationships, but talk about boundaries that are cross in familiar relationships.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Especially with finances. I think that's something that comes up so often, whether that's, a down payment on a house, whether that's caring for elderly parents, whether that's, what sibling's going to pay for what, their level of involvement. And I always think of the aging parents because this is something I deal with a lot with clients is like the sandwich generation, if you're familiar with that term of these parents that are raising children and dealing with aging parents and they're in the sandwich generation and they're trying to figure out how can I take care of my parents and raise my children at the same time. Um, and figuring out like how can I get support from a sibling or from somebody else that might not be there? And how do I set the boundary of like, here's what I can do. I need you to take up some.
Hmm.
I need you to take up some of the task in saying that. and just expressing what you need, like, hey, this is what I can do. This is what I need from you.
So does that mean that you automatically stop doing, like, because I think women sometimes we're a lot of talk
Hmm.
and we're not any action, right? Our bark is worse than our bite. So how do we carry that out? How do we actually do it,
Yeah.
I guess, without the guilt of not taking on everything like we used to?
Yeah. Here's what I can do. If you're the one dividing the task, right, you get the one to kind of decide what you take and what you don't. Here's what I'm capable of doing. And I state it that way. And I tell them, here's what I can do. Where can you pick up? And asking them that question. Where can you pick up there? Here is what my capacity is with it. Let's say we're doing the aging parents as an example. Here's what I can do for them, and this is what I can provide. Where can you pick up? And usually I'll say that and say, ask them, see how they respond, and go from there. You can also tell them, of course, what you want and need from them, but also just a simple question, that open question of like, where can you support and pick up? Here's what I am capable of doing.
No, that's really good because then you don't get into the whole emotional thing. Like, you're not doing
Mhm.
this. I feel like blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah. It's like, this is what I'm able to do. Tell me what else you can. I like that. I like that a lot. And so I think that is a good thing. And even with children, I mean,
Mhm.
talk about how you see that in parents and children, especially in finances.
Yeah.
I see it a lot, but I'm sure from
Abs-
your vantage point.
Absolutely. There's so many different things to talk about when you're thinking boundary setting with children, right? We're setting examples for our kids, right? They watch us. I joke that kids are like little sponges, right? They absorb everything that, they see in their environment. And especially kids, let's pull this back to finances, they repeat their parents' money behavior. They just do. Like, most likely, they're going to repeat their parents' money behavior that they see going on in the household, right? And so they're going to absorb that. And so, how can we set boundaries and set examples for them of, whether that's in relationships or finance? Like, they watch their parents' relationship and they see those boundaries, and they end up repeating that in their own relationship.
Hmm.
So, how can we model for our children how we want them to be in the future?
Hmm.
And I tell that
Yeah.
to clients so many times. I ask them that question. I'm like, when you get older and you're 10, 20 years from now, what do you want your kids to say about you in your relationship or their childhood? What is that you want them to take away?
Hmm. I see that too. And I think those are good questions. But a lot of times, parents are trying to make up for the
Mhm.
lack that they had in their lives.
Yeah.
So they're overcompensating
Mhm.
financially for their children when now they're overextending themselves and they're losing
Mhm.
themselves in a process. And the kid doesn't really even understand or maybe
Yeah.
need that level of stuff, things, support
Mhm.
because they could do it themselves. I think that's a challenge, but I'm sure a lot of women come to you with that trauma, I guess, using that word,
Yeah.
everybody uses trauma, but with that trauma of, my
Mhm.
parents were super poor. And
Mhm.
now, I want to make sure that Johnny has the new Acura and in high school. And so realizing that now they are overextending themselves and maybe not even teaching their children the main points about financial management and responsibility. And so I do
Yeah.
see that we repeat our parents' money behavior. And y'all, you guys have heard my story. I have been a product of that, where there were times when coming up, my parents, they weren't together. And so a lot of things that I saw done wasn't necessarily responsible. It was like having fun before paying the primary bills and then growing up avoiding money. I think a lot
Mhm.
of us do that because it seems like it's so overwhelming, or better yet, allowing our family to, believe that we can do it all. And so I think a lot of high achieving women may have that hero syndrome, like, okay, well, I got to pay for everything for mom
Mhm.
and dad and the kids and all that things. So I like what you say is like that control circle. I think that is very, very important. What else do you see when it comes to boundaries or the lack thereof in finances in your practice. And I like these tools, but are there any other tools that you help them or that you use? And what successes, I think, have you seen? Or has there been like
Yeah.
successes you've seen where women now feel more empowered?
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen that a lot because I think a lot of times my clients come to me and they're high achievers, right? Their ambition has gotten them super, super far, but their lack of boundaries have held them back. It's like the ambition helps move them forward, but they get stuck here because their lack of boundaries just holds them back. And so they realize by saying no and setting boundaries, they can accomplish more, they can do more, they can have more capacity. And even just empowering them to know they have a choice. Something I've noticed a lot is when we struggle with boundaries, we don't feel like we have choices. And I'm like, there's always a choice. There's always a decision you can make, whether that's with a marriage, a relationship, a job. There's always a choice. And there's always a consequence to that choice. And whether that's, leaving a job or leaving a relationship that's no longer serving you, there's always a decision. And there's a consequence related to that, no matter what. But you always have a choice. So the biggest thing I've seen my clients start with is this feeling of I'm not empowered. I don't have a decision. I'm a victim of my circumstances to feeling empowered and feeling powerful and saying, oh, I can make a decision and assert myself in my relationship and get what I want and get what I need. I've had clients come and be like, I just feel really disconnected from my partner. I don't know how to talk about my wants and needs. I'm scared to even bring up this topic that's really sensitive for me, whether that's sex or finances or raising children. And even just getting to the point of like comfort talking about these topics. I've seen clients come and then we had a great conversation and it went great. And we talked about and we agreed and we're going to change this moving forward. And like just seeing that shift of comfort, speaking up for themselves, advocating in their relationship and seeing that how that empowers them. It's like a domino effect. And they do it at work and they do it with friends and it just expands. But it's that piece of like, am I in my own way?
Mm, that is a great, am I in my own way? Wow. I like that. I like that question to ask yourself because that whole thing goes back to the control circle. What can
Hmm.
I control? Oh man, I'm going to use that for myself. Am I in my own way? Wow. I think a lot of times, yeah, we do have this victim mentality, not necessarily in a bad way. It's like I have no choice. I
Hmm.
have to because
Yeah.
I'm this person. And I like what you said earlier about how it has a domino effect and it impacts their work, like how they show up at work, where
Yes.
they may have been the person to take it all. And now that they've discovered that they can set limits, they say, well, no, I actually don't want to be on that project because I have five I'm working on,
Hmm.
and so, or better yet, asking for more money. So I
Yeah.
have a lot of women who, are severely, sorely underpaid, high
Hmm.
achievers, may have great titles and positions, and now having that conversation with the powers that be about asking for more money. Do you encounter that in your practice and help them navigate that side of their life as well?
Absolutely. I think that's, the fear of rejection, the fear of saying no, being told no is big a lot of the times. And this feeling of like, I can't ask. But I always kind of come back and flip back and I say, why? Why can't you ask? What is no the worst thing that's going to happen? Okay, what's the worst outcome? I'm always like, I come from if you're familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy
Mhm.
standpoint with a lot of these things. And I'm kind of like, okay, well, where do these beliefs come from? What is the worst thing? Let's reason with this. What is the worst thing that can happen if you ask for a raise? They tell you no, you're right where you started.
Mhm.
What's the best thing that can happen? You can get a little raise or a big raise or a title change or, something different to happen. That's the best case scenario. So why not? Um, if you don't ask, nothing changes. And I always tell folks that like the biggest thing is we keep ourselves stuck because we don't ask for what we want and what we need. And we're going to stay and then we're going to end up in this cycle. And it's the self pity cycle, I call it. And we're in the pity party of one. And we end up in that circle. But we got to get out of the circle, got to get out of the pity party. And we got to go and say, okay, Let me ask. Okay, my job won't give me a raise. Let me start looking at other jobs. Go interview, go get some compliments on, your interviewing skills and your work ethic. You're going to feel a hell of a lot better.
Mhm. Absolutely. You work hard for your money. Now it's time to keep more of it. Join my 4-week wealth intensive and learn the exact money retention strategies I teach my clients to build wealth with confidence. Starting June 23rd, registration is just $497. Secure your spot today. What is cognitive behavioral therapy? You mentioned that. I believe I know what it is, but for the folks listening, what does that mean and how do you employ that?
Yeah. So it really focuses on your core beliefs, your thoughts, and how that impacts your feelings and then your behavior. And so it really starts with these messages that we have as a child. What are those beliefs we have about ourselves? A lot I'll see a theme that I see in a lot of the women I work with. I'm not good enough. That's something I see a lot. Or I don't deserve nice things, or, I'm not a worthy person. These different, really just these core beliefs, these thoughts that we have about ourselves that we hold very deeply impact the behaviors that we do. And they're not explicit. Like we don't talk about our core beliefs or our core values. Like we don't talk about that very explicitly, but it impacts every decision that we make, right? If we don't feel worthy and valuable, we're going to act in a way that reflects that. We're going to choose relationships that don't serve us. We're going to choose jobs that don't appreciate us, et cetera, right? But when we explore and really look at like, what do I actually believe about myself? And how does that make me feel? The emotion behind it, right? Does it make me anxious? Does it make me sad? Does it make me upset? And then what do I do in response to that? What's the behavior? I choose to stay small. I choose to not ask for that raise. I choose to not to stay in this relationship that's no longer serving me, et cetera. Right? I choose an action that relates to that. And it's so connected. And it's asking ourselves that question, like, what are these beliefs? What are these thoughts that I'm telling myself in my head?
Mhm. Yeah, because a lot of it is us, huh? A lot of it's
Hmm.
things that we have are telling ourselves and things. Yeah, I like that core belief system. So I guess, I've heard, we have this big phenomenon of coaches and then we
Hmm.
have the therapists.
Yeah.
And in this work, tell me what would be the differentiator?
Hmm.
Because
Between coaching and therapy.
yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah. So it gets murky because I think there's a piece of right therapy. We are professionals with masters or higher, masters or a PhD in mental health counseling or psychology or social work, et cetera, et cetera. Right. We provide mental health support. It's focused on maybe your past, your present, your future, but mostly probably often like processing that past and really focusing on this mental health challenge that you're experiencing, that anxiety, that self esteem, that boundaries, right? Whereas coaching is more present focused, it's focused on problem solving, right? It doesn't look at that past history and stuff and really dig from a psychological perspective. It's the here and the now and solving the problem, which in some ways that can serve the client well. But if you're looking to process trauma, if you're looking to process deeper issues, your anxiety, your self esteem, really exploring that childhood and that deeper stuff is going to be really beneficial because it's not a problem that's going to be solved. It's an issue you need to explore and understand deeply.
Mhm. So when you're doing that, and as it relates to boundaries, how do you employ CBT in boundaries? Are you talking about like the activities that you have them do? Okay, so we
Hmm.
explore the past and we know that the reason why I'm bad with money is because I never, I saw my parents be bad with money, right? And so knowing that, how do we then change the behavior? And I guess it starts with cognitive, mentally, right? But how do we change the behavior? Because I think most of the time, especially people in my world, financial planners, financial advisors,
Yeah.
we're focused on the behavior.
Yeah.
We're not focused on, at least the folks I've seen. I kind of do like, okay, what's your relationship money conversations? Like, how were you
Hmm.
brought up? Because that helps give me a lens into, well, okay, this is why, we're eating out a lot or spending
Hmm.
$1,000, whatever. So, how do we fix the behavior, I guess? Or is there a fix? Like, how do we
Yeah.
help them do that?
What is your beliefs about money? right? Do you believe that you deserve to have a lot of money? Do you believe that what do you believe the function of money is? And like, what are those beliefs that you're telling yourself? What's your money story? I love to explore that with clients a lot of like, what's your money story? Did you grow up with a lot of money? Did you not grow up with a lot of money? What function does money serve for you? Right? Money serves a lot of functions for us, right? It's so much more and deeper than just currency or things to survive. It's for a lot of people, and I'll say for women in general, I work a lot with women going through separation and divorce, right? Money might be freedom from leaving a abusive or a partner that's not serving them. Money might be freedom from that.
Mhm.
That's what that money might be for them. It's not just a number in a bank account. That might be freedom. That might be pursuing their dreams. So it's so much more. So like when I'm applying the CBT to the money, right? I'm thinking, what are your beliefs about money? Do you believe that you deserve money? And how does that make you feel, therefore, right? What are your emotions coming up for you? Are you feeling anxious when the word money comes up? You're scared, maybe to look at that number in the bank account because you don't feel empowered, you know? And then what's the behavior that you choose to do in response to that feeling? Because our behavior is always in response to some kind of emotion. There's always an emotion underneath that behavior. If you're spending, let's say a client that's spending compulsively, right? Is it their inadequacy that they're trying to make up for? Is it their childhood where they didn't get a lot and they feel anxious and I need to give my kids everything, like that example you used earlier of like the parent buying their children everything to make up for that? If we identify that core belief, we can tackle that and we can explore that and figure out, okay, let's replace that with a healthier belief. Then that feeling's going to change and then the behavior is going to change.
Mm, mm. Wow. Okay. All right. So it almost is like I think about it sometimes scripturally, like out of abundance of the heart, what you're
Mhm.
thinking, what you're believing, what you're feeling comes out and what you do in your actions.
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with people, women, high achieving women that you see, what are the common beliefs or misconceptions they have about money or themselves that lead to behaviors that are not really serving them?
Yeah. I see a lot of times I don't deserve to have this feeling of I don't deserve it. They don't say it outright, but there's this piece of underneath this feeling of I don't really deserve to have what I have, though I worked hard. A lot of I'm not good enough, that I'm not good enough to have this or to be able to handle this. I can't handle this comes up a lot of I can't deal with this. Um, is a lot of the beliefs I think about money and finances that come up for these women of like I just I'm not good enough to handle this. I'm going to mess up, right? The perfectionism comes in of like I don't know how to do this. So I'm not going to be able to figure this out. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to make a mistake.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I would say that's a common theme, and I see a lot of women come in like, "I didn't know, no one told me," and yeah, they don't feel like they deserve it, so they give so much of themselves and the
Mhm.
money away without first taking care of them. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I've been on a personal journey with my therapist and my life coach, and that is one of the themes is like putting me first
Mhm.
and not feeling guilty for putting
Mhm.
me first. And so a lot of us high achieving women do extremely well. We bust our butts, but we put everybody in front of us. And so I
Yeah.
like the fact that, okay, we've recognized what this is, we explore what those common beliefs are, and then we figure out how to reprogram, I guess I would say,
Mhm.
yourself to the belief that you want to see in your life. Is that correct? Or
Yeah.
how do we do
Yeah. And I also think about when you were saying that, like self-care, right, is something we don't often talk about enough. And financial self-care is a thing. Like we talk about, when we think self-care, we think bubble baths and chocolate and wine and all of that. But like financial self-care and like taking care of yourself financially is self-care. Knowing your finances, knowing how much you're saving versus spending, empowering yourself to, yes, we can treat ourselves sometimes with limits, right? But taking care of yourself financially is self-care. That's a form of self-care. That's you taking care of you and empowering yourself to, what's your values and what's important for you to spend on and where can you leave it?
Mhm. Yeah, I say that all the time. I say, because I'm in this world, managing your money is the best form of self-care. It is
Mhm.
because I
Yeah.
think it's a lot of peace associated with it. You have control. This is something you can control.
Mhm.
Relationships with other people, getting them to understand your feelings, your boundaries, and what you won't or will accept may be a little more difficult. But when it comes to your money, you have the power. And so I
Yeah.
think it is, I agree with you. I know it's self-serving, but it is the best form of self-care to me because
Yeah.
for me, that's where a lot of things stem from. Now, I believe, yes, there's a lot of things in our past
Mhm.
that have, programmed us and created the situations or helped us develop these thoughts about ourselves and about money and how we should handle money. But I do believe that, yes, I take making sure that my bank account was good and that I had savings over going to get a massage any day. I love to
Yeah.
look at my account and see money, right? But that's just me. But yeah, I think that is so important that we understand that we are deserving. And so how do you get people to realize that they deserve the money that they worked for, that the ambition
Yeah.
that they fought so hard to the positions and promotions and the success that they have, that they really deserve it. And hence the things that come after the ability to buy a nice home or treat themselves to whatever it is they want, that they truly deserve it without all the guilt of, I should be doing this. For instance, and I will tell you personally,
Mm.
sometimes even now, I'm an empty nester. And, so my children are all grown, gone, married, living their lives. Two are not, but they all living their lives. And I was buying a ticket to a concert and for myself. And I was like, oh man, I think they would like this. Maybe I should invite so and so. And I started feeling bad, like, man, I'm gonna buy this and then I'm gonna tell them after that I went to so and so. And I should have
Mm.
invited them because, I was used to making sure that the children were always
Mhm.
included and that I now deserve this time to do what I want to do
Yeah.
without having to feel guilty for doing what I want to do without said kids. So, how do you help people get beyond that, especially when it comes to money and just things like that?
Yeah. I think it's the piece of like emotions are okay. Like it's okay to feel bad. It's okay to feel guilty. Like let's explore that. Not judging yourself or beating yourself up for feeling that way. That's okay. What's underneath that guilt? And I really like to explore with clients what is underneath that feeling that you're experiencing. What's underneath that guilt? What's happening there? And what's really underneath that? Because it's not about the guilt. It's about so much more than that. And feelings are okay. All feelings are right. And I think accepting that we feel guilty, it means we really care about them and we want us to join. In some moments, maybe it's great to buy that ticket for them and have them join. But it's also okay in those moments to say, hey, I'm not going to buy that ticket for them and I'm going to go and enjoy myself while at the same time, I love and appreciate them and enjoy spending time with them. Both can coexist. And I think this piece of like where we feel like we have to pick one or the other, we can both, love and appreciate our relationships and also say, hey, I'm not going to pay for this. I'm going to go by myself and enjoy it. Both can coexist.
Mhm, mhm. Oh, that's really good. That's really good. So, as we wrap up, I mean, it's your floor. So tell us, like, about you, about any more that you want to share when it comes to this topic of boundaries and relationships. The services you offer, y'all. First of all, I want to say this: you guys know, and I didn't mean to cut you off, Dr. Lauren. You guys have heard maybe in the news where there is said coach who promotes herself as doctor and she's a therapist and all the things. And we're sitting here with a PhD. Okay, so let's not play. She is a therapist. She is a doc. She has a doctorate. She has the education. She has the experience to help people through this. And I believe, if I'm not, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that this is kind of one of your specialties. It's kind of helping
Hmm.
people, women, high, not just women, high achieving women, deal with boundaries in their relationships in all areas, but also in finances. So, I mean, it's your floor. Tell us a little bit more about what you do or whatever else you want to say that I may not have asked you about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said at the beginning, I'm a totally virtual private practice. So, I do one to one mental health counseling with mostly women. As most of my clients, I will see men, but women are my specialty. I love working with high achieving women, boundary setting, emotionally immature parents, political and world event anxiety. And I also offer EMDR for trauma. So, if you've gone through any kind of childhood trauma or any trauma in your life, however you define that, EMDR is a really great approach that focuses on the mind body connection where you don't have to actually talk about your trauma and still process it within your body. It's really, really cool. So that's one of the services that I offer. I also offer speaking services. I love doing public speaking on topics like boundary setting and self care and talking about mental health in an approachable, easy way that's not intimidating. That's one of my passions. And I speak at the national level. I do this all the time. And I love, love doing that about talking about these things in a way that anyone can understand because I think there's such a gatekeepy thing I think sometimes with mental health and we feel like we don't know or we have misconceptions from social media and one of my big passions is how can we talk about this in a real and authentic way that's not scary or taboo. I think we've done a lot better about talking about mental health and making it less taboo, but there's still this piece that I'm like, let's talk about it more. Let's make it less taboo. So, speaking services I offer, one to one counseling, totally virtual, I offer, and the EMDR therapy. I always recommend if a client, if someone, high achieving women, that they've gone through some trauma and they're having a hard time processing and they've kind of pushed it back because oftentimes we overcome that with, being a high achiever and doing, going, but there's still something holding us back. It's a nice way of really exploring that in a kind and gentle way of just, understanding our body better and listening to our body. So I always recommend that for folks.
I want to go back to something because I circled it, burnout.
Yeah.
So how do you know or how do you prevent the burnout that we
Hmm.
experience? I had an episode where I was like, I can't if I do one more thing. But
Hmm.
it shouldn't get there, right?
Yeah.
So how do we, I guess, be proactive about that as high
Yeah.
achievers?
So, really understanding what burnout is, right? Burnout is this total exhaustion. This is mental, physical, spiritual, like, right? It's just this exhaustion where you're tired and you feel like you're never rested. And it's this piece of like, you're hitting a brick wall. And that looks different for many people. But again, I just think the brick wall metaphor is a great way of thinking about it. And how do we prevent that before it happens? Boundaries and self care, right? Setting boundaries with work, setting boundaries with our relationships, taking care of ourselves proactively and not running on empty, right? I always describe burnout as like you're a car running on E. Eventually, it's just going to stop. It might stay on E for a little while, but eventually you're going to run out of gas and you're going to stop. And you don't know where you're going to stop. You don't know where you're going to be. You might be in the middle of the highway. You might be in front of your garage. You don't know, but you're going to eventually stop. And that's how I really describe burnout is like, how do we proactively prevent this? Because it could happen at any point. And nourishing ourselves and taking care of ourselves and knowing what do I want and need in this moment and honoring that.
Yeah, that I think that's extremely important is preventing burnout, and especially when it comes to finances, because I find a lot of women come in and they have no clue. Like
Mhm.
it amazes me, that a woman that could make $500,000 a year doesn't realize that she actually makes $500,000 a year. She knows
Yeah.
what goes into her bank account, and she
Mhm.
knows where the money goes. The bills that may come out or the things that she needs, but really taking stock of the money coming in,
Mhm.
looking at it going out, there's an avoidance, there's nervousness around that. And so then they come in and they're like, I'm burnt out, I don't want to look at it, I have no clue.
Yeah.
And they have this, I don't know, I don't care. And I'm scared now because the more you avoid something, I think the more fear is associated
Mhm.
with it. And so now you have no clue. I had a lady come in my office and we go through their things together and we were opening envelopes that she just was too scared to open, only to see that her 401k had dropped significantly. And by then she had quit her job to start her own business. And I mean, her 401k had dropped 90% because she wasn't looking at it. gives so much fear. And she felt like, I'm burnt out. I work all day. I can't come home and look at my finances. And so navigating that is important. So I like that you said, like, when you feel like you're hitting a brick wall, that's burnt out. But then I think the self-care piece should be a consistent thing. Like, we should
Yeah.
have routine self-care so maybe we won't get to that wall. Like, you used the car analogy,
Yeah.
right? But if you change the oil and you get it washed, and the oil is 5,000 miles, you can't drive beyond that, or else you're going to mess up the engine. I guess it would be the same thing for us, I would imagine, right? I
Yeah.
just like that analogy. So, yeah, so that was my thought, but I love it. I love the fact that, first of all, you work with clients that I work with, right? High achieving women. I like the fact that you help them explore what is at the core of this belief, right? It's a lot of things that we financial planners don't do, maybe don't have the time or the skills, right? I'm not you. I
Mm.
don't I don't have the training and the license. And then kind of helping them figure out how to change those behaviors. And that's
Mm.
important because a lot of people focus on the behavior, but not the root of the behavior. So,
Yeah.
doing the whole money story, you guys, and you all know I did a workshop on this, helping to rewrite your money story. So, Dr. Lauren and I will be doing some webinars on how to do things like that and explore not just okay boundaries, but how can you start implementing these things in your life the way you want to see it. And I think that is super important. So I'm talking on and on because I could talk about this topic forever. Dr. Lauren, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and sharing your knowledge. You all, I will make sure that her contact information is in the show notes. You can reach out to her. She's completely virtual, so you can have a conversation with her virtually. I see my therapist virtually, it works. And she can help you deal with some of these money issues that you're dealing with and really the core beliefs surrounding them. So, anything else you want to add, Dr. Lauren?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on here. I really enjoyed talking about the connection between finances and mental health. I think it's such an important topic that I'm very passionate about, and I'm really excited, to see and, to do some more work together further and encourage folks to reach out if you're thinking about therapy, if you're scared and you've never done it, reach out. We can just have a no pressure conversation about it and see where it goes. But it is the scariest thing is making that first step and like realizing something needs to change and doing it. But that is the first step. And so I really appreciate it and enjoyed coming and chatting.
Well, we're going to have more conversations because you have a lot of knowledge. So she's kind of going to be our partner when it comes to working with clients. A lot of times, the women come in and they want to change the behavior and their, like I said, core beliefs that need to change. And I
Hmm.
need to say, okay, you know what? It might be good if you see the therapist. And so, trust me, she will be one of the ones I'll be sending you guys to because I like the fact that she works with high achievers and that she really helps you explore what's at the root so that you could change the behaviors. And I think that's extremely important. So thank you for today. Thank you for your expertise. And I'm looking forward to having more conversations and doing more workshops and things together so that we can really help empower women, not just in
Thanks for
finances,
listening to
but
Becoming a
finances is my
Financially
area,
Confident
but
Woman.
anything that
I
intersects
know
with your
from
life because it
experience
does
that
impact you
confidence with
financially.
money
So,
can change
thanks again for coming on
everything.
the podcast.
Be sure
And
to
you all, thank you so
subscribe.
much for
Share
listening.
this
Make
podcast
sure
with
you
another woman
contact
who
her
needs
and have your
encouragement.
consult
And visit
see
Woman
if
to
you
Woman
guys are a good
Financial
fit.
to schedule
All
your
right, y'all.
confidential
Take care.
financial conversation. Remember, you are becoming a financially confident woman.